Welcome, friend, to Life and Liberty Radio. I'm David Householder, here to encourage your pursuit of happiness. You and our partners exploring our shared spiritual journeys. Together, we're dreaming and working for a free society. Tell others today about our adventure in faith and freedom. So breathe in, open your mind, lift up your spirit. Let's get started. So, which are you? An Optimas or a Popularis? Now, you may not be familiar with those terms, but you are one of the two. Politically speaking, it's a matter of style, not so much a matter of policy. The policy is secondary, and it was that way in the late Roman Republic, and it's that way in the late American Republic, because the American Republic is becoming an empire. In other words, we're going to lose our freedom, and we're going to be ruled by more authoritarian figures unless things turn around, because we have commonality with the late Roman Republic. You actually see shadows of these themes in the Star Wars movie series. You have the Empire versus the Republic of the Jedi Knights and freedom and liberty, and that against authoritarian rule that claims to benefit everybody and actually hands out lots of welfare, but only does so that it can entrench its own power. So this is an ongoing meme in human history. It's something we're used to listening to and paying attention to. Now, Julius Caesar is the pivot point between the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. You can think of the Roman Republic as the front nine of a golf course and the Roman Empire as the back nine. Jesus Christ was born in the early part of the empire, so on the 10th or the 11th hole, so to speak. Rome was already starting to go into decline, into the several centuries of decadence. And before that, we had the growth of the Roman Republic. We had no emperors. And people talk about the fall of the Roman Empire, which happened centuries after Christ. And they think that somehow there's a parallel between the United States and the fall of the empire. Well, there isn't. There isn't. We are in a late republic stage, shifting over to empire. And in the 1 century before Julius Caesar, followed by Augustus Caesar, we get the months July and August from their names. During that century, there was all kinds of back and forth between the people who wanted to keep the republic, and they were called the Optimates, and if you are one, you were an Optimas, and the Popularis, or if you were one, you were a Popularis. They were the people who wanted to move in the direction of empire, and the Optimates are the people who wanted to stay with the republic. And so our forefathers set up a republic here, and Ben Franklin said, hey, you've got a republic if you can keep it. Well, we're not keeping it, because for the last century, we've been dominated by Popularis, people moving us in the direction of empire, people moving us in the direction of a military-based state run by one person, the commander-in-chief, who is no longer answerable to the people. And that's primarily happened through the dissolving of the Senate in 1913 in the United States through the 17th Amendment. Well, what do you mean? We still have a Senate. Well, actually, we don't. The whole idea of the Founding Fathers was that the Senate would not be elected by the people. The Senate would be chosen by the state legislatures as sort of a reward for civic service. The kind of people got things done, the people that are older, they were wiser. You'd send them off for 6 years, and they would spend their last 6 years of their working life at the Senate using the wisdom that they had gathered to help steer the country in terms of treaties and confirmation of appointees and those kinds of things. And so it was a really important job, and they weren't supposed to be thinking about re-election or having pressure put on them by the people. In the 17th Amendment in 1913, the very beginning of the progressive era, became a second House of Representatives, where basically it was just the people voting again. So I don't understand the difference between the House and the Senate. They're paid the same. One is elected for 2 years, one's elected for 6, and that's just a throwback to the old Constitution. But now we have 2 people's houses, and we don't have a Senate. And the whole idea of a Senate is that they are not beholden to the people. They have a longer view of things. They have a bigger wisdom base. They tend to be older. Senate is Latin, Senate, we get the word senile from that, actually, from an old person, S-E-N, the idea of a person who's been around for a while. The elders, literally, they're supposed to be the elders. No young people should be in the Senate, and they should be sort of middle-of-the-road people, because if they're chosen by the state legislature, they have to be sort of a compromise candidate to send to Washington, someone who was balanced and someone who wasn't worried about, didn't have anything to prove, didn't have anything to, didn't have to put notches in his or her belt. So the whole idea of the Optimates, the people who wanted to keep the Republic in the end of the Republican era of the Roman Empire, the Roman Republic followed by the Roman Empire, and the Popularis who wanted to establish an empire. Interestingly enough, the name Popularis means of the people, because what aristocrats would do who wanted to become emperors is get the people behind them, and not by benefiting them, but by throwing them gifts like free grain or free games and free circuses at the Colosseum. Bread and circuses, you've heard of that. It was called populism, and what you do is you stir up the people who really aren't thinking about the issues, and you get them on your side, and you convince them that you are their protector, and you give them a dole, you give them a piece of what's going on, and you blame the Senate for everything that's wrong in the country. The people that are elite, you blame them even though you are one of the elite, and you're just using the people to get elected. So they used things like expanded citizenship and free grain and all of that kind of thing. And they worked through what was called the tribunate. A tribune was a person who was from the lower classes, and that person would convene the lower classes in the People's Assembly, like the House of Representatives, and they would speak to them and hear their concerns and bring them to the Senate. So there was a House and there was a Senate. And our founding fathers knew that we needed both, not two of one or one of one. We wanted one of both, one that was more enduring and more conserving in its thinking, and one that would really have the voice of the people, the House, which is why the tax bills have to originate in the House, because you don't tax the people without asking them. And it's also apportioned according to population, where the Senate is not. And so the Populares were the people who got the people to vote for dictatorship. That's basically what it was. And Julius Caesar was their man, and as were the Gracchi brothers and Crassus and some others. And it was called demagoguery. Demagogue. A demagogue is not some demagogue. It sounds like this big word. A demagogue, demos is people. Ago means a person who leads the people. A person who kind of guides the people around by the nose and gets them to vote along. So if you can get the masses with sound bites to back you, they can give you ultimate total power. That's exactly what happened with Julius Caesar. He became emperor and tribune all at once. And so he represented the masses, and he also had total power and the power to execute anyone he wanted to. So basically that's what we had here in the Senate with Rand Paul. We have a president who says, I can execute anyone I want to anytime. And he's saying, that's kind of Roman here. So we're standing on the edge of empire in the United States. We have a Democratic Party that can be equated with the Populares, and the Democratic Party is continuing to try to get the masses behind them, but not for their own good, but for their own good. And the educated classes tend to see that that's really the way they stay in power. That's how you get lots of public university professors. It's paid by the taxes and everything else. And if you get a strong central state, then you can have a gigantic bureaucracy, and they can all have safe incomes, safe pensions, and what we call an iron rice bowl, a living for life. So basically, people who are smart and educated tend to be populares because they tend to think, hey, I can establish this sort of establishment bureaucracy. I can become a part of it, and no one will knock me out of it, and we will vote for the most authoritarian dictator we can. And that's what the Romans did, and they shifted with Julius Caesar over to an empire. So who were the Optimates? The Optimates were the people from the Senate, the people who wanted to optimize things and put the best people to work on things, and the people who wanted a meritocracy. In other words, you get what you deserve by earning it. And whatever you earn, you keep. And there are certain rights. And they were the protectors of the Roman constitution and Roman law, and believed that nobody, including Julius Caesar, was above the law. They believed in mos maiorum, the way of the ancestors, the better wisdom of the past. And they called themselves the liberatores, and the liberatores were the people who killed Julius Caesar, if you remember that from high school English class. The liberatores under Brutus were the people that actually stabbed Caesar. Et tu, Brute, beware the Ides of March. But they couldn't stop the empire because along came Augustus, and we had a string of 5 or 6 really decadent Roman emperors, and it got worse and worse and worse, and eventually Rome fell apart. But they did it by using the masses against the people who believed in freedom and meritocracy. The Optimates were led by Brutus, Cato the Younger, and Pompey shifted over from a Popularis to an Optimas, and Cicero, we call him Cicero, and the Roman Republic, they believed was something worth hanging on to, and so did the Founding Fathers, but we have shifted since 1913, when the Senate was dissolved. And the Senate, we really don't have a Senate in the United States anymore. We just have a second House of Representatives, which just leads to a confusing way of making laws. And we have no tension anymore between those people that are conserving the old ways of the ancestors and the people's voice. And the Founding Fathers knew we needed a balance between the two, and now we've only got one. And so we're sliding into bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger government with more and more and more free grain and circuses, and bigger and bigger demagogues running the place who want the authority to kill at will. And that's when you know you're an emperor, where you don't have to answer, when you can just kill someone. And that's what Rand Paul's filibuster was all about. Now, filibuster became famous during the late Republican era of the Roman Empire through a man named Cato, who stood up and filibustered to keep Julius Caesar from being elected as dictator. And he was willing to die for it. And when Julius Caesar finally took power, he killed himself rather than living under Julius Caesar's rule. So really being an Optimas or a Popularis, being a member of the Optimales party or a Popularis party, was more a matter of style than policy. Were you for liberty? Were you for meritocracy? Were you for freedom? Were you for property? Were you for the ancient ways, the ancient values? Or are you for strong leadership, central government, redistribution of everything? All of those things. And redistribution was a big part of the Popularis platform in the ancient Roman Empire. It was just, we want to redistribute all the land, whether or not you farmed it, whether or not you owned it. And the minute you start to take away the idea of property by force, then you become really a tyrant. So the popular votes of the Senate, the 17th Amendment, we started shifting towards an empire. And the rest of the world sees us as an empire. And we have a president right now, and a president before him, who wanted to have the right to kill at will. And now we have a president who wants to be able to kill with a drone without any kind of accountability, anyone, anywhere. And he was stood up to by Rand Paul. So I think the Republic is still safe for a little while, but we are, make no mistake, sliding towards empire, which means sliding towards the back nine. And I believe that the Republic is worth saving. I believe the vision of the founders is worth saving. I believe that our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness are worth saving. I believe that the idea of property rights are worth saving. I believe a meritocracy is worth saving. I think it's what makes America different. It's what keeps us from being a feudal state. It's what keeps us from being medieval European feudal fiefdoms. And we need to move more in the direction of the vision of the founders and be a light on the hill, be different, not try to mimic the other countries, but dare to create a free society with all of its uncomfortableness. So, Benjamin Franklin was greeted on his way out of the Constitutional Convention by a woman. She asked him, "What form of government did you come up with?" He answered, A republic, ma'am, if you can keep it. Well, that's all for today on Life and Liberty Radio. Thanks so much for sharing this part of your spiritual journey with me. Now, the views on this program are not necessarily those of my advertisers, sponsors, places I work, or do business with. They're purely my own, but I'm sharing them with you, so share your ideas with me. Write me on Twitter at Liberty House, LIBERTYHOUS, no E. Until next time, let's continue dreaming and working for a free and spiritually grounded society.